The SR-72 Darkstar was never America's real hypersonic weapon. It was the decoy. For 20 years, defense headlines chased Lockheed's Mach 6 Ghost and called it the future of air power. Meanwhile, a Navy-DARPA program built a bomber that moves 3 times faster. It doesn't need a tanker, a fighter escort, or a friendly airbase to strike anywhere on the planet. The SR-72 Darkstar has dominated defense media since 2007, when Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works first floated the concept of a Mach 6 successor to the SR-71 Blackbird. Aviation magazines repeated the legend with every new rendering, defense blogs tracked every rumor, and the story stayed simple. America would return to the era of outrun anything reconnaissance. The Air Force never confirmed the program officially, but they never denied it either, and that silence was louder than any press release. However, the SR-71's actual records have stood for 50 years without a serious challenge. On July 28, 1976, an SR-71 hit Mach 3.3 over the Nevada desert at an altitude of 85,069 feet, and no air-breathing manned aircraft has come close to those numbers since. The Blackbird was built from 85% titanium to survive the heat at that speed, and the engineers who designed it believed they were approaching the physical limit of what metal and air could do together. They were right. The aircraft leaked fuel on the ground because its panels were designed to expand at temperature, and its engines had to slow down to subsonic speeds just to start the ignition process. Every flight turned into a negotiation with physics, and the SR-71 won every time. The SR-72 narrative served a purpose that had very little to do with engineering progress. It kept public attention locked on Lockheed Martin, on the Air Force, and on a program that moved slowly and talked loudly. The contract number sat in plain sight, the renders reached the public, and the timeline kept slipping with every budget cycle. Each delay made headlines, and every headline reinforced the idea that the future of hypersonic flight belonged to the Air Force and its favorite contractor. That was the whole idea. While the world watched the Skunk Works hangar, a different program with a different sponsor and a different security classification spent real money in a different building. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's a pattern in Black Project history that has repeated since the U-2 hid inside a weather research budget and the F-117 hid inside a radar cross-section test program. The A-12 Oxcart flew for years before the public knew it existed, and the B-2 bomber had already reached low-rate production before the first grainy photograph leaked. The visible program is rarely the real program when the stakes are high enough, and the Mach 6 Ghost became the perfect diversion because it was just plausible enough to believe and just slow enough to ignore. Whether the SR-72 exists in some form is not the real question. It probably does. What matters is whether it was ever designed as the main event or whether it simply hid the real act behind a curtain that never opened. When a program generates 2 decades of headlines without a single confirmed flight test or leaked photograph of a prototype on the ground, it's worth asking what else was funded in the same budget line. The same companies that worked on the visible program also held contracts on the programs that never made the news. That overlap is not a coincidence. In 2022, the Air Force Research Laboratory awarded Leidos a contract with a $334 million ceiling for a program called Mayhem, which carried the description of a larger class air-breathing hypersonic system for surveillance and strike. The contract named Calspan, Draper Laboratory, and Kratos as teammates. That was real money for real hardware. And then the funding went quiet in fiscal year 2024. The official story said the program stalled. But in the world of classified development, a budget line that disappears from public view is not always a program that dies. Sometimes it's a program that graduates. The Mayhem program used a turbine-based combined cycle engine, and that's the technical foundation of everything that follows. A TBCC engine uses jet turbines for takeoff and low-speed flight, then transitions to ramjet or scramjet power once the aircraft is moving fast enough to compress air without mechanical help. Designing an inlet that feeds both types of engine is one of the hardest problems in aerospace, and the heat at hypersonic speeds requires materials that didn't exist in quantity when the SR-71 flew. The University of Central Florida was testing experimental shape-shifting scramjet models for the Naval Research Laboratory as early as 2023, and those experiments produced data that didn't stay in the lab. Then the official timeline shifted. In February 2025, DARPA's Secretive Aerospace Projects Office announced the Next Generation Responsive Strike Program, or NEXT-RS. The press release described a large hypersonic bomber prototype with a TBCC propulsion system producing 30,000 to 38,000 pounds of thrust, conventional fuel, and metallic construction. The goal was a prototype by 2030, with formal design and development starting within 5 years. On paper, NEXT-RS looked like the natural next step after Mayhem stalled. But in practice, the announcement of a prototype program often follows the completion of a classified demonstrator, not the other way around. The timeline on the press release and the timeline in the engineering shop are not the same document. The Navy's involvement is what makes this story different from every other hypersonic headline. What the Air Force owns is the bomber culture, the B-2 Spirit, the B-21 Raider, and every strategic strike doctrine written since 1947. What the Navy owns is the sea-launched strike mission and the problem of hitting targets from over the horizon when the carrier sits too far out. A Navy-DARPA hypersonic bomber isn't competing with the B-21 for budget. It rivals the aircraft carrier for the power projection role, and that rivalry changes the stakes from an Air Force acquisition fight to a rewrite of naval warfare. It also explains why the program disappeared from Air Force budgets and reappeared in documents that don't carry service labels. While the Air Force Mayhem line went dark, the Navy was already funding its own hypersonic strike architecture through programs that look like missile development on paper. The conventional Prompt Strike program is designed to put boost glide weapons onto Zumwalt-class destroyers, and the Army-Navy Joint Dark Eagle ground-launched system is moving toward operational testing. These are missile programs, not aircraft. But the propulsion physics, the glide body shapes, and the thermal management solutions are the same building blocks that a reusable bomber would need. A service that masters boost glide at Mach 5 is not decades away from mastering sustained air-breathing flight at Mach 18. It's one propulsion breakthrough away, and the Navy has been collecting that breakthrough in pieces for years. That leaves an open question the official briefings never address. If Mayhem's engine data survived the budget cut, and if DARPA's NEXT-RS is the public face of a program that already flew, then the Navy didn't suddenly decide it needed a hypersonic bomber in 2025. It decided it needed 1 year ago, and it built the machine inside budgets that were never labeled as aircraft development. The numbers were there. The contractors were there. The only thing missing from the public record was the airframe itself. To understand the claim, start with the benchmark. Mach 5 is the threshold where hypersonic flight begins, and the SR-72 was designed to cruise at Mach 6. The platform we're discussing operates at roughly Mach 18, which outruns the Darkstar concept by a factor of 3 and outpaces the SR-71 Blackbird's confirmed record from 1976 by nearly 6 times. At that velocity, the edge of space is not an obstacle. It's the operating environment, and the aircraft treats the upper atmosphere as a highway instead of a ceiling. The Mayhem program was built around a single bet, that a turbine-based combined cycle engine could hand off from turbojet to ramjet power inside a single airframe. At Mach 18, that handoff is not just possible, it is the only thing that matters. The atmosphere above 100,000 feet is thin enough to reduce drag, but thick enough to generate lift and allow controlled maneuvering. Conventional turbojets handle takeoff and climb. Then the ramjet or scramjet takes over once the airframe reaches the velocity where incoming air compresses itself without spinning turbine blades. The Navy's shape-shifting scramjet experiments in 2023 were not theoretical exercises. They were live fire tests of the exact inlet geometry needed to make that handoff stable at speeds where the air itself becomes a wall of fire. Heat is the enemy that killed every previous attempt to push an air-breathing aircraft past Mach 3.5. The SR-71 used 85% titanium in its construction to survive Mach 3.3, and even then its skin expanded so much that the fuel tanks leaked on the ground by design. At Mach 18, conventional metals fail outright. The airframe requires ceramic matrix composites and active cooling systems that bleed fuel through the skin before it ever reaches the engine, using the liquid as a heat sink to keep the structure intact. Solve the heat problem, and you don't just get speed, you get a bomber that doesn't need a foreign airfield or a tanker orbit to reach its target. Beyond speed, what makes this platform truly stand out is total operational independence. The bomber can take off from a conventional runway in the continental United States, climb to operating altitude over the Pacific or the Atlantic, and descend on a target anywhere on Earth in under 90 minutes. It doesn't need aerial refueling. It doesn't need a fighter escort to fight its way through hostile airspace. It doesn't need forward bases in Allied territory that an adversary can threaten, neutralize, or hold hostage before the first shot is fired. It doesn't need to wait for a diplomatic agreement or a coalition vote. It needs a runway, a fuel truck, and a target. The weapon is not the bomb inside the bay. It's the speed and the reach. A conventional 500-pound bomb delivered in 90 minutes from a Nevada runway is more valuable than a nuclear weapon that takes 6 hours to plan, route, and launch through a chain of command. The target cannot see the bomber coming. Existing air defense radars are not designed to track an object moving at Mach 18 at the edge of space. And even if they could detect it, the interceptor missile would need to fly faster than the bomber to catch it. No such missile exists in any inventory on Earth, and no country has announced a program that could build one before the end of this decade. That last capability is worth pausing on because it is not a marketing claim. It's the central engineering achievement around which the entire aircraft is designed. A bomber that cannot be intercepted cannot be deterred by defensive posture alone. The only counter is to destroy the runway before takeoff. That requires knowing which runway, which hangar, and which aircraft. A black program doesn't provide that information, and that absence is exactly why the program works. American air power has always depended on a global network that most Americans never think about until it disappears. That network includes bases in Japan, Qatar, Germany, and Guam. It includes tankers orbiting over Allied airspace and carrier strike groups sailing within range of their targets and waiting for the order to launch. It includes refueling depots, maintenance crews, and agreements with host nations that can be revoked overnight. That network is not a convenience, it's a vulnerability. And both China and Russia have built their missile forces specifically to hold those bases at risk on the first day of a conflict. A bomber that needs none of that infrastructure does more than survive the opening salvos of a major war. It makes the enemy's entire targeting philosophy irrelevant. If there are no tankers to shoot down, no forward bases to bombard, and no carrier group to track across the ocean, the adversary's war plan loses its first and most important assumption. The geography that has shaped American military strategy since World War II suddenly stops mattering because a Nevada runway can reach the South China Sea faster than a ship can get a single aircraft into the air. The bomber doesn't need permission to cross Allied airspace. It doesn't need a diplomat to negotiate basing rights 6 months in advance. It simply climbs, accelerates, and arrives. In February 2025, DARPA announced Next RS with a 2030 prototype target, and the public timeline says 5 more years of slow development. But Black Project doctrine is clear on this point. A prototype announcement usually comes after the classified demonstrator is already flying, not before the first rivet is set. The X-65 drone, the B-21 Raider, and the F-117 Nighthawk all followed the same pattern. Public acknowledgement arrived only after the hard engineering had already finished in the shadows, and the program had moved from experimentation to production. The public timeline is not the real timeline. It's the timeline that the program office is willing to share. Most analysts have not fully grasped why the Navy's role changes the math. The Air Force holds the bomber culture and the strategic strike doctrine. The Navy holds the sea-launched strike mission, which means hitting targets when the carrier is hundreds of miles from shore. A Navy-DARPA hypersonic bomber is not an addition to the Air Force fleet. It's a potential replacement for the carrier strike group as the main tool of power projection. And if a single continental runway can put ordnance on a Pacific target faster than a carrier can get its first aircraft into the air, the balance of naval power shifts in a single afternoon. The SR-72 played the cover story because it felt safe to the public. The Air Force label made it look official. The Lockheed name made it look credible. and the whole package felt familiar to anyone who followed defense news. The real weapon was built where no one thought to look, inside Navy budgets and DARPA project offices that don't hold press conferences and don't publish quarterly reports. The public was told to watch the Skunk Works hangar in Palmdale. They should have been watching the Navy's research contracts and the shape-shifting engine tests that never made the defense blogs. The ghost in the headlines never posed the real threat. The real threat hid inside the machine they didn't name. The era of visible bombers and advertised timelines is ending. The next generation of American strike power will not be photographed at air shows, and it will not have a press kit. It will simply be somewhere else before the target knows it left the ground. The United States is building a bomber that flies at more than 3,800 miles per hour and returns to base. No nation has ever done this before. While the B-21 Raider hides from radar, this aircraft outruns the interceptors, giving defenders seconds to react instead of minutes. DARPA revealed the program in February 2025, with a prototype scheduled to fly by 2030. The race to build it will determine whether American air power keeps its edge for another generation. For decades, American bombers survived inside defended airspace by avoiding detection entirely. The B-2 Spirit proved this concept in combat over Serbia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Its flying wing shape and radar-absorbing materials rendered it nearly invisible to the threat rings it penetrated. Only 20 were ever built. The B-21 Raider represents the next evolution. It's a subsonic, sixth-generation stealth strategic bomber designed to strike without warning. The Air Force expects it to form the backbone of penetrating strike for the next 30 years. It flies below the speed of sound because stealth, not speed, serves as its survival mechanism. The radar cross-section is so small that most threat systems can't generate a firing solution in time. However, the global air defense situation has shifted in ways that challenge the stealth-alone assumption. Russia has now deployed the S-400 Triumph across more than 10 countries with a 400-kilometer engagement envelope. The S-500 Prometheus, which is now entering service, claims a 600-kilometer range and is marketed as a stealth killer capable of engaging the F-22, the F-35, and hypersonic weapons alike. Low-frequency and multi-static radar systems are reducing the advantage of pure stealth geometry. China has constructed dense air defense networks across its eastern coast and contested territories. A 2023 simulation from Chinese researchers suggested that their new stealth aircraft could find and kill a B-21 using hypersonic missiles. That claim may be propaganda, but it signals the direction of the threat. Stealth remains important, and the B-21 is still necessary to the force. It isn't sufficient alone. The Air Force is already bridging this gap with an interim weapon. In April 2026, a B-1B Lancer was photographed carrying the AGM-183AAR-RW, or Air-Launched Rapid Response Weapon, for the first time. The weapon weighs roughly 5,000 pounds and accelerates beyond Mach 5 after release. The B-1B itself is detectable, but the weapon is fast. This is a stopgap, not a strategy. The B-1B fleet is scheduled to retire by 2037, and no replacement exists that combines heavy payload with sustained high-speed flight. America needs a bomber that doesn't merely hide from radar, it needs a bomber that makes radar irrelevant. On February 13, 2025, DARPA's Aerospace Projects Office announced a program hidden from public view for years. APO keeps so low a profile that its existence is omitted from some DARPA organizational charts. It manages the most classified aviation projects in the Department of Defense, and the announcement appeared quietly in a program brief. DARPA classifies the Next Generation Responsive Strike Program, known as NEXT-RS, as a Y-plane concept. That designation means an experimental aircraft, not a production system. The concept describes a large, reusable, air-breathing, hypersonic strike aircraft designed to fly above Mach 5 and return to base. It is an aircraft that takes off from a conventional runway, carries payload inside defended airspace, strikes its target, and lands to be refueled and flown again. Most hypersonic weapons today are rocket-powered and cannot be recovered. An air-breathing hypersonic aircraft uses atmospheric oxygen, which means it can carry more payload. It also means the engine must function across pressures and temperatures that no operational bomber engine has ever faced. No nation has demonstrated a reusable hypersonic bomber under its own power. The X-51A Waiver Rider achieved Mach 5.1 in 2013, but a B-52 dropped it at altitude and the scramjet burned for only 210 seconds. Next, RS must sustain hypersonic flight across entire missions, not just brief test windows. That gap between demonstration and operational capability is what the program is built to close. The program targets a flying prototype by 2030, following the collapse of an earlier DARPA effort called Mayhem that never reached flight. Next RS is the second attempt, and the timeline is aggressive. DARPA does not build operational squadrons. It builds prototypes that prove whether a technology can transition to the Air Force for production. The contrast with the B-21 Raider is the point of the concept. The B-21 survives by shaped geometry and radar-absorbing materials that avoid detection. Next RS survives by overwhelming speed. Even if a defense radar sees it, the interceptor may not have time to launch, guide, and hit a target moving at more than a mile per second. The bomber does not need to be invisible. It needs to be uncatchable. The aircraft is reportedly designed around a propulsion system producing 30,000 to 38,000 pounds of thrust. It uses a turbine-based combined cycle engine, which transitions from conventional turbojet to ramjet and then scramjet as speed increases. A bomber that field crews can't repair is a bomber that can't deploy to a theater of war. Every jet engine ever built represents a fixed compromise. A turbofan performs efficiently at low speed but produces diminishing thrust above Mach 2. A ramjet functions only above the speed of sound and cannot propel a vehicle from a standstill. A scramjet sustains hypersonic flight but needs to reach Mach 5 before ignition. Each mode works in isolation, and none can carry a bomber from runway to target and back. The turbine-based combined cycle engine bridges these three worlds. It combines a conventional turbojet for takeoff with a dual-mode ramjet and scramjet for supersonic and hypersonic flight. DARPA recognized this gap decades ago. In 2016, the Advanced Full-Range Engine Program selected Aerojet Rocketdyne to build a full-scale TBCC demonstrator for flight from 0 to Mach 5. Engineers proved each mode individually for missiles and test vehicles. The transition posed the real challenge. Around Mach 2.5 to 3, the turbojet must shut down and the ramjet must ignite without interruption because the airflow does not pause. The pressure, temperature, and velocity inside the combustion chamber shift in milliseconds, and an imperfect handoff blows out the flame. Above Mach 5, the ramjet transitions to scramjet mode, where air moves through the combustion chamber faster than the speed of sound. The engine must survive pressure changes, thermal loads, and aerodynamic shocks that would destroy a conventional turbofan in seconds. At Mach 5, the airframe's skin temperature exceeds 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That heat softens aluminum and weakens titanium. The leading edges and engine inlets bear the brunt of this heating. Nexus is reportedly using metallic construction with advanced thermal management rather than exotic composites. The designers chose this deliberately. Conventional alloys can be inspected, repaired, and replaced by maintenance crews in a theater of war. A carbon fiber skin that delaminates at 3,000 degrees is useless in the field. An aircraft that requires a climate-controlled hangar after every flight is not a bomber. It is a laboratory specimen. The X-51A Waiver Rider achieved Mach 5.1 in 2013 with 210 seconds of scramjet burn, a record that fell far short of the minutes or hours a bomber mission demands. The Waiver Rider was dropped from a B-52 and accelerated with a solid rocket booster before the scramjet even started. Next, RS must take off from a runway, accelerate through every engine mode, sustain hypersonic cruise, decelerate, and land. It must exceed the Waiver Rider's benchmark by orders of magnitude. The entire aircraft is designed around an engine that can transition, sustain, and survive. Without a reliable TBCC engine, Next RS is only a concept. With it, America builds the first reusable hypersonic bomber in history. The SR-71 Blackbird flew at Mach 3.2 for 3 decades, across reconnaissance missions over hostile territory. Hundreds of missiles were fired at it by Soviet, Chinese, and North Korean defenses. None hit their target. Geometry explained the misses. By the time a surface-to-air missile reached the Blackbird's altitude, the aircraft already lay miles away. The missile chased a ghost that never occupied the coordinates the radar predicted. Nextras aims to replicate that physics advantage at more than twice the speed. At Mach 5, the bomber covers approximately 1 mile every second. A modern air defense battery detects the target, computes an intercept solution, launches a missile, and guides it through mid-course and terminal phases. The system relies on radars, command centers, and launchers that are sometimes separated by dozens of miles. Against a subsonic stealth bomber, that chain takes several minutes. Against Mach 5, it may have less than 2 minutes. That assumes the radar maintains a clean track through the plasma sheath that forms around a hypersonic vehicle, which is not guaranteed. The distinction between them matters most. The B-21 survives by avoiding detection, while Next-RS survives by making detection irrelevant. Radar may see it, and the S-500 may track it, but the operator has no time to decide, no time to launch, and no margin for error. The interceptor missile may be faster than the bomber in raw velocity, but it must be launched, guided, and steered across a closing geometry that is shrinking at over 1 mile per second. The defense system does not merely need to detect the target. It needs to detect, decide, launch, and hit before the bomber releases its weapons and turns for home. The B-1B, carrying an ARRW hypersonic missile, is the halfway point in this evolution. The bomber is detectable at long range by modern radar networks, but the weapon is unstoppable once released. Next-RS completes the logic. The aircraft and the payload arrive at hypersonic velocity. The enemy's warning time is compressed from minutes to seconds. There is no standoff distance because the bomber itself is the weapon. America's bomber force has always relied on 2 survival mechanisms. Stealth avoids the fight entirely. Standoff weapons keep the aircraft outside the threat ring. Next-RS adds a third path. It goes straight through the ring faster than the ring can close. That changes the math of every war plan written in the Pacific and in Europe. DARPA and the Air Force want a prototype in the air by 2030. 5 years separate the program announcement from first flight. The timeline compresses to an almost impossible span for an aircraft that must solve propulsion, thermal, and aerodynamic problems that have defeated engineers for half a century. A first flight in 2030 leaves almost no margin for the setbacks that every experimental aircraft program encounters. The B-21 Raider was publicly revealed in 2015 and made its first flight in 2023. 8 years passed between the reveal and the takeoff. Northrop Grumman refined the subsonic stealth technology in the B-21 over decades. Next-RS attempts something no nation has yet demonstrated. It would become a reusable, air-breathing hypersonic bomber that takes off and lands under its own power. The X-51A Wave Rider set the previous record in 2013, reaching Mach 5.1 with just over 3 minutes of scramjet burn. That falls far short of what a bomber mission demands. Next-RS must handle the entire flight profile from runway to landing under its own power, including acceleration, cruise, and deceleration. It must push far beyond the Wave Rider's limited benchmark. If the program slips, more B-1Bs carrying hypersonic missiles will fill the gap. That works as a solution, but it requires a detectable aircraft to deliver a weapon that outruns interceptors. If Next-RS succeeds, American air power gains a third leg. It adds not just stealth penetration and standoff missile strike, but direct, time-critical, hypersonic bombardment from a reusable platform. DARPA does not build fleets. It builds prototypes that answer whether a technology can work. The Air Force decides whether to buy it. The 2030 prototype flight will not be the end of the story. It will be the moment when the Air Force learns whether the future of bomber design is hypersonic or whether the physics still belong to missiles alone. The United States has dominated the skies for 70 years through a combination of stealth, skill, and technological surprise. Next-RS is the next chapter. It does not replace the B-21. It represents a new class of aircraft built around a different physics principle. Speed is not just performance. In the 2030s, speed may be survival itself. Traditional aircraft, no matter how stealthy, remain vulnerable when exposed too long to modern air defense networks. America's latest hypersonic test has pushed beyond those limits, demonstrating speeds that stun defense experts and even outpace the F-22 Raptor, the U.S. Air Force's premier fifth-generation fighter. But what hypersonic test did the United States just conduct? And could it give America the decisive edge over its rivals? Join us as we unveil the details of the hypersonic test that the United States recently conducted and what exactly stunned experts. The United States Army is preparing to bring one of its most ambitious weapons to life, a system that has been whispered about for years and tested under a cloud of both setbacks and secrecy. The long-range hypersonic weapon, fittingly nicknamed Dark Eagle, designed to reach ranges of nearly 2,700 kilometers, or roughly 1,670 miles, and capable of flying at speeds faster than Mach 5, Dark Eagle is engineered to outpace and outmaneuver traditional defenses. Unlike conventional missiles, it rides the upper edges of the Earth's atmosphere, carrying its hypersonic glide body in a realm too high for most interceptors, yet too low for space-based shields, giving it an almost untouchable flight profile until the moment it dives onto its target. This ability makes it a weapon designed not just for offense, but for deterrence against formidable rivals such as China, Russia, and North Korea, all of whom are racing to master their own hypersonic arsenals. But Dark Eagle's road to deployment has been anything but smooth. Originally expected to be operational by the year 2023, the weapon stumbled through a series of frustrating test failures. Its first major setback came in 2022, when pre-flight issues forced the Army to scrub its launch, delaying progress at a time when urgency was mounting. The following year brought another hurdle as engineers uncovered a critical battery flaw just before testing, a seemingly small technical issue that created another lengthy pause. For critics, these stumbles seem to confirm doubts about whether hypersonic technology was ready for real-world use. Yet the program pressed forward, and by 2024, Dark Eagle began to prove its worth, with a battery making its debut at Exercise Resolute Hunter, a milestone that suggested the tide had turned. Now with official deployment scheduled before the close of fiscal year 2025, the weapon is poised to become more than a prototype. It is set to become an operational reality. The question of where the first unit will be stationed remains uncertain, though Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington, home of the first multi-domain task force, has long been the likely candidate. Wherever it lands, Dark Eagle will come as part of a complete system, including launchers, transport vehicles, fire control stations, and a full logistical backbone to keep the weapon combat ready. Its arrival will give the Army a strategic edge, one that promises not only to close the hypersonic gap with rival powers, but also to establish a new standard for precision strike warfare. That edge was on full display when the United States took a decisive step in its Indo-Pacific posture, deploying the Dark Eagle long-range hypersonic weapon system to Australia during the Talisman Sabre 2025 exercise. It was the first overseas deployment of the ground-launched hypersonic system and signals Washington's intent to deter and, if needed, counter growing Chinese military reach. In July, the Hawaii-based 3rd Multi-Domain Task Force moved the system into Australia's Northern Territory, where it integrated into a 3-week exercise that involved roughly 40,000 troops from 19 nations. For the United States, the deployment was both a demonstration of capability and a test of how rapidly advanced strike systems can be projected into contested theaters. Dark Eagle was engineered for precisely this kind of forward presence. Each missile can fly faster than Mach 5 and strike targets at ranges near 1,725 miles, while maneuvering in flight to frustrate interception attempts. Mounted on mobile launchers, the system supports shoot-and-scoot tactics that complicate enemy targeting and shorten the time adversaries have to respond. That mobility, paired with high speed and mid-course maneuverability, gives commanders flexible options for rapid long-range response and reshapes how planners think about deterrence and escalation in the region. Beyond the hardware, the deployment served clear diplomatic purposes. Stationing the Dark Eagle in Australia reassured allies that the United States remains committed to Pacific security and is willing to integrate advanced capabilities into combined operations. For partners anxious about Beijing's expanding navy and missile forces in the South China Sea and beyond, the move signaled that the U.S. can partner closely and bring modern strike options to bear. The presence of the system during a large multinational exercise also provided a chance to rehearse alliance logistics, command arrangements, and the exchange of targeting data under realistic conditions. Operationalizing hypersonic weapons in a forward setting is complex. Their unusual flight profiles and speeds demand new planning, logistics, and command and control approaches. Transporting, emplacing, and sustaining the system during a forward deployment required careful coordination between U.S. and Australian authorities. Troops trained on secure emplacement, rapid repositioning, and integration with allied sensors, so fire control and targeting could work smoothly across national lines. Exercises like Talisman Sabre tested not only the weapon, but also the networks of people, sensors, and communications that must function together for a hypersonic strike to be credible and safe. Officials frame the move as part of a broader shift toward dispersed lethality and integrated joint concepts. Patrick Mason, a senior logistics official with the U.S. Army, said weapons like Dark Eagle are meant to complicate adversaries' decision calculus and strengthen deterrence with speed, accuracy, and flexibility. In combined drills, the system also tested how partners can share time-sensitive intelligence, maintain resilient communications, and operate under the strain of complex multinational command structures. Still, the deployment raises important questions for planners and policymakers. How will regional basing and rotational patterns evolve to support a persistent presence without unnecessarily escalating tensions? What legal and operational safeguards will govern the use of hypersonic weapons in crowded maritime and air environments? Allies must balance strong deterrence, signaling with discipline to prevent miscalculation in crises. Dark Eagle's trip to Australia was more than a tactical move. It was a strategic statement. By demonstrating the ability to deploy a mobile, high-speed strike capability alongside partners, the United States showed it can field advanced deterrent options in the Indo-Pacific, complicating any adversary's planning. For allies and rivals alike, the message is clear. The tempo of modern strike warfare is accelerating, and those who can move faster will shape the region's security and policy matters. Its deployment is also a significant step for Washington, but American planners know it will not, on its own, be enough to maintain a decisive edge in the Indo-Pacific. China has been pressing ahead with its own hypersonic arsenal, developing and unveiling systems designed to bypass traditional defenses and complicate U.S. strategy. Chief among these is the DF-17, first displayed in a Victory Day parade in Beijing in 2019, a system that sent ripples through military circles by showcasing China's ability to field an operational hypersonic glide vehicle well before many had expected. Unlike speculative projects, the DF-17 has been paraded, tested, and woven into the People's Liberation Army's broader modernization efforts, signaling Beijing's intent to lead in the hypersonic race rather than play catch-up. Now, as another Victory Day parade approaches on September 3rd, reports suggest that even newer hypersonic platforms could be revealed, potentially joining China's arsenal shortly after the celebrations end. If accurate, these developments underscore a pattern. Beijing uses such parades not only for domestic prestige, but also as strategic messaging to its rivals. Rolling out new hypersonic systems in front of cameras is more than a show of strength. It is a signal to Washington, Canberra, Tokyo, and beyond that, China will continue to innovate and deploy weapons designed to neutralize foreign strike capabilities. With each new system announced, the pressure grows on the United States and its allies to demonstrate that their own technologies are credible and deployable, not simply prototypes or test articles. Predictably, China's reaction to the Dark Eagle deployment has gone beyond military calculations. State-controlled outlets and affiliated analysts have seized on the move to portray Australia as an instrument of American power rather than an independent actor. In remarks to the South China Morning Post, Chen Hong of East China Normal University argued that Australia had become a tool of Washington's Indo-Pacific strategy, describing Canberra as both a strategic and tactical weapon used by the United States across multiple fronts. This rhetoric fits neatly within Beijing's long-standing narrative that U.S. alliances are manipulative, designed to coerce partners into serving American interests at the expense of their own sovereignty. It is also an attempt to drive wedges within alliances, suggesting to the Australian public and regional observers that Canberra is compromising its autonomy by aligning too closely with Washington's security architecture. From an American perspective, however, the deployment is less about using allies and more about building credible regional deterrence. Hypersonic systems like Dark Eagle gain much of their value from forward basing, where they can threaten targets across vast distances without the delay of repositioning from continental U.S. soil. Australia's Northern Territory offers ideal geography for such deployments, close enough to potential flashpoints to matter, far enough from direct strikes to complicate enemy planning. For Canberra, hosting such systems provides not only security assurances, but also a seat at the table in shaping the alliance's future direction. By integrating into exercises like Talisman Sabre, Australia gains access to cutting-edge operational concepts and strengthens its role as a core player in the Indo-Pacific balance of power. Still, Beijing's criticisms cannot be dismissed outright. Australia's decision to host advanced strike systems inevitably ties it closer to U.S. strategy and could make it a target in any future confrontation. Public debate within Australia will likely intensify as deployments grow more permanent, raising questions about risk, sovereignty, and the balance between deterrence and provocation. Yet for now, Canberra's choice is clear. Aligning with Washington's hypersonic push is viewed as essential to ensuring stability in a region where speed, range, and precision are redefining military power. In this sense, the Dark Eagle deployment and China's looming hypersonic displays are part of the same story, a competition not only of technologies, but of narratives. For Washington and Canberra, the emphasis is on deterrence and alliance strength. For Beijing, it is about sovereignty and resistance to U.S. influence. The hypersonic race is therefore more than just an arms competition. It is a struggle over how power is perceived, projected, and contested across the Indo-Pacific. Amid this shifting balance, the United States Air Force is equally focused on the skies, determined to keep the F-22 Raptor sharp in an era where aerial dominance is no longer guaranteed. As part of its fiscal year 2026 budget request, the service has earmarked more than $90 million to kickstart a sweeping viability upgrade program. The aim is simple yet ambitious: ensure America's premier fifth-generation air superiority fighter remains competitive against the rapidly advancing threats posed by China and Russia well into the next decade. For a jet that once redefined air combat, these updates are less about reinventing the aircraft and more about stretching its formidable design to meet the challenges of an evolving battlefield. The Raptor's problem has never been raw capability. It remains one of the most stealthy, agile, and lethal fighters ever built. Instead, the challenge lies in sustaining and adapting it to keep pace with emerging threats. Maintenance for the fleet has become increasingly complex and costly, with established procedures leaving little room for error in high-intensity conflict scenarios. As adversaries unveil advanced radars, longer-range surface-to-air missiles, and stealth fighters of their own, the Air Force knows it cannot allow the Raptor to stand still. The planned upgrades are designed to enhance every facet of survivability, from its ability to avoid detection to how it responds when detection occurs. At the center of this modernization package is the Infrared Defensive System, or IRDS, a breakthrough in early warning technology. Borrowing from Lockheed Martin's TAC-IRM-ST system, first integrated on contractor-operated F-5 Advanced Tiger jets, the IRDS will provide the Raptor with advanced sensors capable of spotting hostile threats, whether long-range air-to-air missiles or sophisticated surface-to-air batteries, earlier and with greater accuracy than ever before. By giving pilots more time to react and counter, the IRDS could mean the difference between survival and loss in the opening minutes of a high-end engagement. But the IRDS is only one part of a broader suite of updates designed to make the Raptor more formidable. Parallel to the viability upgrade, the Air Force is already investing in an infrared search and track system, or IRST, housed in an external pod. This system allows the F-22 to detect and track low-observable aircraft like China's J-20 or Russia's Su-57. Without relying solely on radar, adding a critical edge in the stealth versus stealth era. Additionally, engineers are working on stealth-optimized external fuel tanks, a long-awaited innovation that will extend the jet's range without compromising its radar profile or aerodynamic performance. For a fighter expected to operate across the vast Pacific theater, such improvements could prove invaluable. Taken together, these enhancements are more than a technical refresh. They represent a bridging strategy, one meant to keep the Raptor relevant until the arrival of its successor. That successor, known variously as the Next Generation Air Dominance Program or by its notional designation, the F-47, remains years away from operational service. In the meantime, the Air Force cannot afford to let the backbone of its air superiority fleet grow outdated. By investing in these upgrades now, the service ensures not only that the Raptor can continue to dominate in contested skies, but also that a large fleet of upgraded fifth-generation fighters will still be available even after the sixth generation enters the fight. The message is clear. While the Raptor's days as the undisputed king of the skies may eventually give way to the next era of fighters, it will not fade quietly into the background. With the IRDS, IRST, stealth fuel tanks, and other classified improvements on the horizon, the F-22 is set to remain a lethal guardian of American air power, bridging past innovation with future supremacy. Even as the U.S. Air Force continues to expand its ambitious upgrade program for the F-22 Raptor, all eyes are also on the future. The F-47, Boeing's sixth-generation fighter that promises to carry American air superiority well into the middle of the century. Envisioned as part of the Next Generation Air Dominance Initiative, the F-47 is not simply another aircraft, but a flying weapons ecosystem designed to dominate in an environment where stealth, speed, and information warfare converge. Yet while its potential is undeniable, the program is unfolding at a moment when Boeing faces a series of setbacks that cast long shadows over its defense portfolio. Boeing's troubles extend well beyond its military wing. The company has faced repeated controversies in its commercial division, ranging from production issues with passenger aircraft to persistent delays in delivering the new Air Force One. These problems have already shaken confidence in the aerospace giant's ability to deliver on time and on budget. In the military sphere, the picture is no less complicated. Earlier this year, two newly delivered F-15EX Eagle II fighters were abruptly grounded after a serious fuel venting malfunction was discovered. The defect caused excessive and unpredictable fuel discharge, an alarming issue that undercut the F-15EX's reputation as a low-risk, dependable upgrade to legacy fleets. For critics, it was yet another sign that Boeing was struggling to balance its commitments. Compounding the technical difficulties, Boeing's labor relations have hit turbulence as well. In early August, more than 3,000 workers across three major Midwest military aircraft plants launched a strike after rejecting a modified 4-year agreement. The walkout raised immediate concerns about whether the company could maintain production schedules for several key defense projects, including the F-47. Delays in development or production could ripple across the Pentagon's modernization timeline, frustrating efforts to keep pace with emerging threats from China and Russia, both of which are accelerating their own sixth-generation fighter programs. Despite these challenges, the Pentagon has signaled continued confidence in the F-47's future. The U.S. Air Force has requested $3.5 billion to push forward development, even as the U.S. Navy's F/A-XX program faces budgetary cutbacks. For the Air Force, the stakes are clear. The Raptor, still a formidable aircraft, is aging, with only 143 combat-coded units remaining in service. Replacing them requires a fighter that does more than match its performance. It must surpass it in every measurable way. With the F-47, Boeing has promised an aircraft capable of integrating advanced stealth, powerful new sensors, adaptive engines, and seamless connectivity with drones and other platforms. The Air Force's plans are ambitious. It expects to acquire more than 185 of the new fighters, enough to replace its entire Raptor fleet and then some. Artist renderings released by the service highlight a sleek, tailless design, optimized for low observability and long-range operations. Unlike earlier generations, however, the F-47 will not simply be measured by its aerodynamics or weapons payload, but by its ability to operate as the central node in a vast digital battlespace. Artificial intelligence, sensor fusion, and cooperative engagement with unmanned systems are expected to define its edge. Still, questions linger. Can Boeing overcome its mounting technical and labor challenges to deliver on time? Will production delays or cost overruns erode congressional support for the program? And perhaps most pressing of all, can the F-47 arrive quickly enough to ensure the United States retains its air dominance as rivals roll out their own sixth-generation prototypes? Can the United States F-35 withstand the threat of Chinese hypersonic weapons? Recent advancements in China's hypersonic technology have raised global concerns, sparking questions about whether the United States is losing its technological edge. Does the U.S. have the capability to counter these hypersonic threats, or is it at risk of falling behind in this critical area of defense? Join us as we delve into the groundbreaking comparison of two ultimate weapons, the F-35 versus Chinese hypersonic threats. China is making fast progress in hypersonic missile technology, putting it at the forefront globally and raising concerns in the United States. One major example of their advancements is the DF-17 missile, which is designed for speed and precision. It is a medium-range ballistic missile that uses solid fuel and is road mobile, meaning it can be transported and launched from various locations. They have also made breakthroughs in thermal protection and cooling systems, which are crucial for managing the intense heat these missiles generate during flight. These developments give China a clear technological advantage, showing their growing strength in modern military innovation. It's certain that they are not stopping anytime soon, because they recently achieved another major breakthrough in hypersonic missile technology, particularly with its thermal protection system. Chinese scientists have made significant improvements by adding steel nose cones to their new missiles. This advancement is crucial because it enhances the missile's ability to survive the extreme conditions it faces during flight. In August, China also announced the development of an innovative cooling device designed to manage the intense heat generated during hypersonic flight. Hypersonic missiles travel at incredibly high speeds, which results in a huge buildup of heat. Without proper cooling, this heat could damage the missile's guidance system, affecting its accuracy and performance. With the new cooling technology, the missile is better equipped to withstand these extreme temperatures, making it less likely to malfunction. This improvement allows the missile to fly more effectively and remain undetected, increasing its chances of successfully reaching and eliminating its target. These technological advances are a significant step forward for China's hypersonic missile program, giving it a performance edge in the field of modern warfare. As the race for advanced weaponry intensifies, these innovations could change the future of missile technology and warfare. One member of Congress is raising concerns. Representative Doug Lamborn, who is part of the House Armed Services Committee, held a hearing for a subcommittee this spring. The mood was serious. One expert on the panel said the United States is clearly falling behind China. Jeffrey McCormick, an intelligence analyst with the Defense Intelligence Agency, stated that China now has the world's leading hypersonic arsenal. The United States still has reason for optimism. Surprisingly, one of the best American hypersonic missiles is being developed by the U.S. Army. Known as the Long-Range Hypersonic Weapon, or by its nickname, the Dark Eagle, this missile has impressive capabilities. It can travel at speeds exceeding 3,008 human miles per hour and has a range of 1,722. The Dark Eagle uses a road-mobile launcher, a feature also preferred by China for its missiles, making it a highly versatile weapon. According to the Army, the missile can fly to the top of the Earth's atmosphere and stay just out of reach of air and missile defense systems until it's ready to strike. By the time it's within range, it's already too late to react. Despite China's advancements, all is not lost for the U.S. The race to develop hypersonic missiles is critical, as China has made remarkable progress in this area. Their scientists have been steadily advancing hypersonic technology and already have fast, maneuverable missiles deployed. China's military continues to look for ways to improve these weapons, and its rapid progress is something the U.S. must be prepared to match. However, the United States is not far behind, and with the right focus and commitment, it can catch up to China. The issue lies in the way the U.S. military approaches hypersonic development. While China has been able to make steady, incremental advances in their missile technology, the United States has focused on separate programs across various branches of the military. This lack of coordination could slow progress. In contrast, China's approach is more streamlined, allowing them to make faster improvements and field more advanced systems. There's still a chance for the U.S. to regain its lead, but it will require strong, focused efforts. We have yet to experience a Sputnik moment where China might test a hypersonic missile in a high-profile launch that demonstrates its serious intentions to use these weapons for strategic purposes. A launch over Guam, for example, could be a powerful signal to the world of China's capabilities and intentions. Until such a moment happens, policymakers like Representative Doug Lamborn, who is raising concerns about the state of U.S. military technology, are crucial. They are pushing for the U.S. to stay focused on developing advanced hypersonic systems to counter China's growing missile capabilities. While there have been some obstacles and challenges in the development of American hypersonic weapons, the U.S. defense industry is known for its strength. With continued investment, collaboration, and focus, it's likely that the United States will catch up to China in this critical area of military technology. The arms race is far from over, and with the right strategy, the U.S. could still emerge as the leader in hypersonic missile technology. This leads us to one important question. Can the F-35 withstand the lethality of the Chinese hypersonic threat? Let's analyze the strength of this American airfighter. The F-35 Joint Strike Fighter is one of the most recognizable fighter jets in the world. Since it began service, this American-made fifth-generation aircraft has flown over 777,000 hours. Currently, 20 nations use the F-35, making it a vital tool for the U.S. and its allies. For years, the U.S. held air superiority with the introduction of the F-22 Raptor. However, both China and Russia now have their own fifth-generation jets and are working on sixth-generation designs. For now, the F-22 and F-35 remain America's top fighters. The F-35 mission systems are like the brain and eyes of the jet, making it one of the smartest aircraft ever built. Packed with advanced sensors and software, these systems give pilots a complete picture of their surroundings, making the jet a powerful tool in modern warfare. Key components include the APG-81 radar, which can track multiple targets over 150 kilometers away, and the Barracuda electronic warfare system, which can detect, jam, and protect against enemy radars. The jet also features a cutting-edge distributed aperture system with 6 infrared cameras that provide a full to 60-degree view, even at night. All this information is fused into a single clear display for the pilot, giving them unmatched situational awareness. Future upgrades include improved sensors, a more powerful radar, and even the ability to control drones during missions. With these advancements, the F-35 isn't just a fighter jet. It's a flying command center built for the future of air combat. Stealth is one of the F-35's most impressive features, making it hard for enemies to detect. Its unique design includes smooth, curved surfaces, precisely aligned edges, and radar-absorbing materials to minimize radar detection. Even the engine is cleverly hidden from view. The jet's advanced air intake system, called the diverterless supersonic inlet, further reduces its radar signature by eliminating gaps that could reflect signals. Remarkably, the F-35 radio cross-section is so small that it's been compared to the size of a metal golf ball from certain angles, even outperforming the stealthy F-22 in some scenarios. Its outer skin, made from durable radar-absorbent material, is designed to last longer and require less maintenance than older stealth aircraft like the F-22. The F-35 also reduces its infrared and visual signatures, making it harder to spot by heat or sight. It carefully manages its radio signals to avoid detection. While low-frequency radars can sometimes detect stealth aircraft, they are bulky, imprecise, and easy to locate, giving the F-35 a significant advantage. For training purposes, it can even use special reflectors to temporarily increase its radar signature. Its cockpit is like something out of a sci-fi movie, designed to give pilots maximum awareness and control. At its heart is a massive 20 by 8-inch touchscreen display, which shows everything from flight data to weapon systems and alerts. Pilots can customize the layout to fit their needs, making it incredibly user-friendly. Beneath this display is a smaller backup screen for emergencies, while advanced voice recognition technology allows hands-free commands. Unlike older jets with head-up displays on the dashboard, The F-35 uses a state-of-the-art helmet-mounted display system. This helmet projects flight and combat information directly onto the pilot's visor, so they can see critical data no matter where they're looking. It even integrates infrared and night vision, allowing pilots to see through the plane for incredible situational awareness. The helmet is so advanced that pilots can lock onto targets and fire missiles without pointing the aircraft directly at them. Each helmet costs a whopping $400,000, but its capabilities are game-changing. While the HMDS had some growing pains, like issues with vibration and night vision early on, it's now more reliable than ever. The latest version boasts improved cameras, sharper displays, and advanced alignment features. The F-35 cockpit and helmet work together to give pilots an unmatched edge in the skies, blending cutting-edge technology with pilot-friendly design. Without going on and on about the capabilities of the F-35, to answer the question, it is unlikely for this American aircraft to be able to directly withstand a hit from a modern Chinese hypersonic missile due to their extreme speed, maneuverability, and difficulty in detection, making them very hard to intercept with current technology. What is the United States Air Force doing concerning the threat that these Chinese hypersonic Air Force pose? The United States Department of Defense is ramping up spending on hypersonic weapons after years of warnings that China is pulling ahead in this technology. However, this new arms race comes with risks, especially as relations between the US and China continue to worsen. And there's limited information about China's advancements in this field. Hypersonic weapons, which travel faster than Mach 5, aren't a new concept. The US has been testing them since the 1950s. But investment in these systems slowed over the years. Meanwhile, China and Russia have made significant progress in their hypersonic programs. Russia recently demonstrated its capability by using 6 hypersonic Kinzhal missiles in Ukraine, the largest single deployment of these weapons during the war. Other nations, including Australia, South and North Korea, Japan, India, and Germany, are also developing hypersonic weapons. The US is now increasing funding and efforts to catch up, but the timing is tense, with US-China relations at their lowest point in decades. This competition could shape the future of global military power. The US Department of Defense reportedly plans to allocate $15 billion for hypersonic weapons development for the Army and Air Force between 2023 and 2027, as highlighted in a Congressional Budget Office report. This figure excludes the Navy's program, which recently awarded a $1.1 billion contract to Lockheed Martin for integrating hypersonic systems into Zumwalt-class destroyers. Experts have indicated that the US may be lagging behind China in this field. Reports noted that China's 2021 test of a nuclear-capable hypersonic weapon surprised many in the defense sector, showcasing advanced capabilities that exceeded expectations. It has been suggested that America's previous technological dominance, once considered untouchable, is now being challenged by China's progress. Observers have pointed out that this shift has spurred the US to accelerate its efforts in several areas. Concerns have also been raised about the absence of treaties governing hypersonic weapons, a situation some believe could lead to global instability, as seen during the Cuban Missile Crisis. However, analysts have noted that the major powers in this domain appear unwilling to pursue such agreements at present. Despite challenges, US defense officials, lawmakers, and weapons manufacturers continue to advocate for hypersonic technology, with the government now committing significant funding to advance the project. Hypersonic weapons are undeniably expensive, but they offer unique advantages that justify the investment. The US military began exploring hypersonic systems as far back as the 1960s, initially focusing on hypersonic flight for transporting people rather than weapons. By the 1980s, however, the focus shifted. During this period, the Air Force tested the maneuvering reentry vehicles, demonstrating that missiles traveling at speeds of Mach 5 or faster could be guided precisely to their targets as they re-entered Earth's atmosphere. The early 2000s marked a turning point when the US began serious efforts to develop hypersonic weapons under its Conventional Prompt Global Strike program. Today, 2 primary types of hypersonic weapons are being developed: glide vehicles and air-breathing missiles. Glide vehicles are launched on rockets and glide through the atmosphere at high speeds, while air-breathing missiles use engines to sustain their hypersonic speeds. Although US hypersonic systems are designed to carry conventional payloads, other nations such as China are pursuing nuclear-capable hypersonic weapons. This was evident during China's groundbreaking 2021 tests, which demonstrated the ability to combine nuclear warheads with hypersonic speeds, raising concerns about the global arms race. As the U.S. pushes forward, these advanced systems promise unparalleled speed, precision, and flexibility in modern warfare, making them a critical focus for defense strategies. China has long sought ways to counter U.S. missile defense systems, viewing them as a threat to its nuclear deterrence, according to Lyle Morris, a senior fellow at the Asia Society Policy Institute. Since the early 2000s, China has significantly boosted its hypersonic weapons program, especially after the U.S. withdrew from the anti-ballistic missile treaty with the Soviet Union. With no restrictions on developing anti-ballistic systems, China felt compelled to develop a different kind of deterrent. One key focus of China's efforts has been glide-type hypersonic weapons. These systems start their journey atop a ballistic missile, explains Timothy Heath, a defense researcher at the RAND Corporation. Once the missile reaches a certain altitude, the hypersonic glider detaches and travels at incredible speeds within the atmosphere. Unlike traditional ballistic missiles that follow a fixed trajectory, the glider can maneuver in flight, using the momentum from its launch to strike its target with precision. China claims its hypersonic weapons are ready for deployment, which Heath notes is a step or two ahead of the U.S., whose hypersonic program is still in the testing phase. This progress isn't surprising given China's advanced ballistic missile program and the U.S.'s relative underinvestment in similar technologies over the years. The real game changer with hypersonic weapons isn't just their speed, but their ability to maneuver and evade missile defense systems like the Patriot. These systems, widely used in the U.S. and 17 other countries, struggle to track and intercept hypersonic weapons due to their unpredictable flight paths and the ability to skim the edge of the Earth's atmosphere before re-entering. According to defense experts, hypersonic weapons could potentially outmatch even the most advanced air and missile defense systems in the near future, making them a significant development in modern military technology. With China's successful hypersonic missile tests and rising tensions between Beijing and Washington, it's understandable to worry about the rapid pace of weapons development and heated rhetoric. However, there are significant obstacles to the widespread use of hypersonic weapons in combat. The high cost, around $15 million to $18 million per missile, combined with the practical realities of warfare, where basic weapons like artillery are often more effective, makes their use in battle questionable. Experts like Lyle Morris and Timothy Heath are skeptical about hypersonic's actual usefulness on the battlefield. A report from the Congressional Research Service points out that critics believe these weapons don't have clear mission roles, don't significantly improve U.S. military capabilities, and aren't necessary for deterrence. In addition, there's concern that China might share its hypersonic technology with other U.S. adversaries, such as North Korea, Iran, and Russia, all of which are developing their own hypersonic programs. As China and Russia strengthen their defense and technological ties, sharing knowledge on hypersonics wouldn't be surprising, says Elsa Kania, an expert on national security. One of the main concerns about China's hypersonic program is that the U.S. might be caught off guard. The fear of appearing less dominant in defense was especially strong after China's successful missile tests in 2021. General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, called these tests China's Sputnik moment, drawing a comparison to the Soviet Union's 1957 launch of the first artificial satellite, which shocked the U.S. Despite the concerns, Heath argues that hypersonic weapons would not be the deciding factor in a conflict between the U.S. and China or any other nation with hypersonic capabilities. The U.S. has a significant edge in other military technologies like stealth aircraft, long-range bombers, aircraft carriers, and submarines, conventional forces that allow the U.S. to project power and dominate adversaries without relying on long-range missiles. As the U.S. continues to invest in hypersonics and other nations develop their own capabilities, it's crucial to establish some sort of agreement on how these weapons should be used in combat. Unfortunately, Morris notes, this may not happen until a major escalation forces both sides to confront the issue. With the current lack of communication between China and the U.S. military, the risk of misunderstandings or miscalculations is high. Furthermore, most significant weapons agreements have historically been between the U.S. and Russia. With Russia pulling out of the New START treaty, The last major nuclear arms control agreement, the hope for any future defense technology agreement seems distant at best. The Aurora's capabilities have redefined the U.S.'s hypersonic edge. Once set by the legendary SR-71 Blackbird, the benchmark of speed now points to the elusive SR-91 Aurora. Rumored to be a next-generation reconnaissance and strike platform capable of Mach 5 and beyond, it signals America's drive for uncontested air dominance amid rising global competition. But could the Aurora itself be a calculated distraction, masking an even more advanced program the United States is quietly developing? And if the Aurora is real, can it outpace rival systems racing to the same goal? Join us as we examine America's rapid progress in hypersonic technology. For decades, rumors about the mysterious aircraft, Aurora, have fueled one of aviation's most enduring legends, a tale that sits at the crossroads of fact, rumor, and Cold War secrecy. Supposedly envisioned as the successor to the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird, itself the fastest air-breathing aircraft ever to take to the skies, the Aurora was said to push the very limits of aerospace engineering. The SR-71, with its razor-sharp silhouette and unmatched record, could sprint across the sky at a blistering Mach 3.5, which translates to more than 2,700 miles per hour. It was equipped with the most advanced sensors, radar, and cameras for its spy missions. It flew very fast and very high, allowing it to avoid threats. If a missile were detected, it would simply speed up to escape. Yet even as this remarkable aircraft retired into history, speculation grew that a new machine had quietly taken its place. A machine far faster, far higher, and wrapped in deeper secrecy. Known by some as the SR-91, the Aurora was rumored to achieve a staggering Mach 5, leaping into a realm once reserved for experimental spaceplanes. The key, according to aviation circles, was the adoption of revolutionary propulsion technologies, such as pulse detonation engines and scramjets, systems that could gulp down air at impossible speeds and turn the sky itself into raw fuel. Such engines would allow the aircraft to skim the edge of space, soaring at altitudes where no enemy fighter could climb and where even the most advanced surface-to-air missiles would be rendered useless. If true, this meant the Aurora could spy, strike, or vanish at will, rewriting the rulebook of modern reconnaissance. But such extraordinary performance came with extraordinary cost, and rumors swirled that the program's price tag had ballooned past $2 billion by the late 1980s, a figure that only reinforced suspicions about a black project hidden deep within the Pentagon's shadowy budgets. The when of Aurora's story became as fascinating as the what. In March 1990, Aviation Week in Space Technology dropped a bombshell, reporting that the name Aurora had accidentally surfaced in a 1985 U.S. defense budget line item, a cryptic $455 million allocation for black aircraft production in fiscal year 1987. From there, rumor intelligence, RUMINT, as insiders like to call it, took flight, spreading faster than any official denial could contain. Eyewitnesses added fuel to the fire, especially in Nevada, home to Nellis Air Force Base, Creech Air Force Base, and the ever-mysterious Area 51. Locals claimed to spot a strange aircraft streaking over the Mojave Desert at dawn, carving contrails that looked like donuts on a rope, a bizarre formation no known jet could produce. Others swore they heard an engine sound unlike anything before. They described it vividly as the sky itself tearing apart. In August 1989, Chris Gibson, a veteran of the Royal Observer Corps and an authority in aircraft recognition, spotted a triangular aircraft being refueled midair by a tanker and flanked by two unidentified U.S. fighters while stationed on an oil rig in the North Sea. He later admitted there was no precedent for what he had seen and that the sight felt like something he was never meant to witness. Further sightings over Britain in 1993 were later dismissed as a Russian rocket re-entry, but the legend refused to die. Even into the 2000s, official reports hinted at U.S. Air Force plans for hypersonic craft capable of Mach 4 to 6, echoing Aurora's whispered specifications. As the saying goes, the proof is in the pudding, but when it comes to the Aurora, no one has ever been served so much as a spoonful. For all the decades of speculation, not a shred of concrete evidence has ever emerged to confirm that the SR-91 spy plane truly existed. Mark Piscopas of the National Interest summed up the riddle bluntly, noting that no solid proof supports the existence of an SR-91 prototype and that it remains uncertain whether the aircraft ever even existed beyond rumor and imagination. According to his analysis, the government has consistently denied that such a project was ever built, and to date, no hard evidence has surfaced of a prototype ever taking flight. Instead, the Aurora saga seems to be a phenomenon fueled as much by cultural fascination as by technical possibility, a story kept alive by a hunger for Cold War-era secrets and a public appetite for legends of aircraft that could do the impossible. Over time, these rumors have often intersected with other theories about hidden military projects, UFO encounters, and extraterrestrial technology, weaving the Aurora into the larger tapestry of speculative aerospace myths that captivate enthusiasts and skeptics alike. Yet even if the Aurora never materialized, its legend has arguably paved the way for discussions about what comes next. The attention once lavished on the SR-91 has since shifted to another proposed successor to the iconic SR-71 Blackbird, the Lockheed SR-72, nicknamed the Son of Blackbird. Unlike its predecessor, which relied on a cockpit crew with nerves of steel, the SR-72 is designed to be reusable, operating autonomously at hypersonic speeds. Stretching over 100 feet in length, its silhouette will recall the sleek lines of the Blackbird. As other nations were developing anti-satellite weapons, area denial technologies, and fast intercepting jets, the U.S. recognized the urgent need for a new spy plane. This new aircraft had to be exceptionally fast, enabling it to enter protected airspace, conduct observations, capture images, and even potentially strike a target long before adversaries could detect or intercept it. These capabilities were beyond the reach of fifth-generation fighter jets or any known space programs. The SR-72 solves this problem. This top-secret project has been in development since 2007. However, engineers at Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works had likely initiated research and development many years prior. Notably, NASA has invested $1 billion in developing the SR-72, potentially contributing groundbreaking technologies that could further elevate its capabilities. As a result of these advancements, the Son of Blackbird is expected to come with a price tag of around $1 billion, since it has a projected top speed of Mach 6, which is more than 2 times the speed of the Blackbird. It can also reach this remarkable speed while flying at an altitude of 80,000 feet, equivalent to 3 times the height of Mount Everest. This implied that this aircraft could traverse the globe in just a single hour. The extraordinary velocity of the Son of Blackbird is made possible by a combined cycle turbofan scramjet engine, a technology in which Lockheed Martin has accumulated 3 decades of experience. Unlike the Aurora, this project has been openly teased by Lockheed Martin and reported on in official contexts, though it too is wrapped in its own cloak of secrecy. The SR-72 is expected to use cutting-edge propulsion systems that blend turbine engines with scramjets. An aircraft that must accelerate smoothly from takeoff to hypersonic velocity cannot rely on conventional engines alone. Engineers have turned to a turbine-based combined cycle system, or TBCC. It is a marriage of 2 distinct technologies, the traditional turbofan engine and the supersonic combustion ramjet, more commonly called the scramjet. This engine is designed to transition seamlessly from subsonic to supersonic and then into hypersonic flight. The turbofan would carry the aircraft from the runway through subsonic and into transonic speeds, at which point the scramjet would ignite, devouring supersonic airflow and propelling the vehicle deep into the hypersonic regime above Mach 5. This dual-mode system is not simply clever engineering, it is a necessity. No single engine design can efficiently cover the entire flight spectrum from takeoff to hypersonic cruise. And the TBCC represents a solution that transforms theory into a practical possibility. Such a leap sounds straightforward in theory, but in practice it demands near miraculous precision. The airflow must be managed, compressed, and ignited in fractions of a second, while the engines endure pressures and heat that would destroy ordinary systems. Alongside propulsion lies the monumental challenge of thermal management. At speeds exceeding Mach 6, the aircraft's skin would be scorched by temperatures hotter than a blast furnace, requiring materials and cooling systems that defy conventional design. Every bolt, panel, and rivet must withstand conditions more brutal than re-entry from orbit, a feat that illustrates the razor's edge on which this program balances. Financially, the task is no less daunting. Advancing from experimental concepts to a true operational aircraft requires billions in investment, and the partnership between government and industry must remain ironclad if this vision is to become reality. While the alignment with U.S. Air Force goals for hypersonic capability adds urgency and direction, the SR-72's fate ultimately rests on whether the resources and political will can keep pace with its engineering ambition. Should it succeed, the result will not merely be another reconnaissance aircraft, but a transformative weapon of strategy, an aircraft able to gather intelligence or deliver strikes before an enemy can even respond, rewriting the doctrine of air warfare. Yet beyond its technical marvels, its very existence could alter global military dynamics. Rival powers aware of its potential may accelerate their own hypersonic programs, sparking a new race where minutes and miles per second become the currency of power. If realized, such performance would make the SR-72 not merely faster than the Blackbird, but a revolutionary leap forward in reconnaissance and strike capability, operating in a realm where time and distance become almost meaningless. Its purpose is clear: to deliver vital surveillance in environments where conventional manned aircraft would face overwhelming risk, slipping through advanced air defense networks at such velocity and altitude that interception would be virtually impossible. Time-sensitive intelligence, the kind that could alter the course of a battlefield or expose hostile actions in progress, would be delivered in minutes rather than hours, giving decision-makers unprecedented situational awareness. Such a capability would mark a revolution in aerial warfare and intelligence gathering. While satellites provide unmatched global coverage, they are predictable in orbit and vulnerable to anti-satellite weapons. Drones and manned aircraft can be agile, but they are increasingly threatened by dense layers of radar, surface-to-air missiles, and interceptors. The SR-72, however, would soar beyond these constraints, offering on-demand access to hostile territory with a speed that compresses distance and a survivability profile that no adversary can match. For the Skunk Works engineers, the goal is nothing less than redefining strategic reconnaissance for the 21st century, providing the United States with an aircraft that ensures no threat remains unseen, no matter how well defended. Whether or not the Aurora spy plane ever truly existed, the SR-72, son of Blackbird, stands as the tangible answer to decades of whispered speculation. If this aircraft takes to the skies, it will not simply continue the Blackbird's legacy, it will ignite a new era of hypersonic dominance. At its projected performance, this hypersonic jet could cross from the continental United States to Europe or Asia in roughly 1.5 hours, a feat that would have been unimaginable during the Cold War. Such blistering mobility would allow commanders to see, decide, and act with unprecedented speed, turning intelligence gathering and strike missions into near-instant responses. In an era when seconds can define victory or defeat, the ability to deliver eyes or weapons anywhere in the world in under 2 hours represents not just an advantage, but a revolution. Yet the dream of the SR-72 is tethered by formidable obstacles. Hypersonic flight is one of the most complex challenges in aerospace, demanding breakthroughs in propulsion, thermal management, and advanced materials. Sustaining speeds above Mach 5 generates heat levels that can melt conventional alloys, demanding innovations that can withstand and disperse unimaginable thermal stress. The turbine-based combined cycle propulsion, which blends turbofan and scramjet engines, is a marvel on paper, but building it into a reliable, reusable system is a task that will push the limits of engineering. Financial challenges also loom large. While preliminary discussions have taken place between Lockheed Martin and U.S. government stakeholders, full-scale funding for demonstrator aircraft and engine prototypes has yet to be secured. The price of developing such cutting-edge technology will inevitably run into billions. And in a defense budget where priorities compete fiercely, the SR-72 must continually justify its strategic value. Even so, the jet's pathway mirrors the U.S. Air Force's larger hypersonic roadmap, which places hypersonic strike and reconnaissance at the center of 21st century warfare. Tentative plans envision the SR-72 entering service around the year 2030, but that date depends on solving the technical and budgetary riddles that stand in the way. The urgency is clear. Advanced integrated air defense systems, such as Russia's S-500 or China's HQ-19, grow more capable each year, threatening to deny U.S. forces access to contested airspace. Traditional aircraft, no matter how stealthy, remain vulnerable when exposed too long to these lethal networks. The SR-72's greatest defense would be its speed, which minimizes the window of detection and interception. By compressing time on target to mere minutes, the aircraft would not just dodge defenses, it would render them obsolete. Yet even as concepts like the SR-72 push boundaries, America's gaze is fixed on the next leap forward. That vision now takes shape at DARPA under the Next Generation Responsive Strike Program, or NEXT-RS. Unlike the stealth bombers that have defined American air power since the 1970s, NEXT-RS is envisioned as a reusable hypersonic craft that blends intelligence gathering with strike capabilities. To aviation enthusiasts, this represents a bold departure. Instead of hiding in radar shadows, this aircraft would embrace sheer velocity, soaring past Mach 5, the threshold of hypersonic flight. That kind of speed could slice the famous SR-71's Los Angeles to Washington record into pieces, completing the same journey in roughly 40 minutes. For the military, this speed does more than impress. It offers the possibility of delivering weapons or reconnaissance anywhere in the world before an adversary has time to react. The project is planned to follow directly behind the Air Force's next-generation air dominance fighter, the highly secretive program set to produce the first true sixth-generation jet. With NGAD expected to arrive sometime in the 2030s, the timeline for NEXT-RS points further into the 2040s. A flying prototype by the end of the next decade is the goal, and the Pentagon's attention already hints that this vision will become more than speculation. Yet speed comes with its own trade-offs. Hypersonic bombers do not blend into radar like the B-1, the B-2, or the soon-to-arrive B-21 Raider. Instead, they slice through the air in designs optimized for efficiency and durability, built to withstand the hellish temperatures generated by skin-searing friction. Such an aircraft would blaze across infrared sensors, lighting up the skies with a heat signature impossible to hide. It would be a phantom of speed, not stealth. This raises difficult questions. Can such a craft survive against modern defenses like Russia's S-400 missile system, whose interceptors boast speeds beyond Mach 10? DARPA's answer may lie in how NEXT-RS carries its weapons. Rather than swooping directly over enemy territory to drop bombs, it could unleash hypersonic missiles from beyond the 250-mile reach of those defenses. Another possibility, whispered by those who follow these developments, is that the aircraft might push past Mach 5, perhaps even approaching Mach 12, a velocity so blistering that interception becomes nearly impossible. At 100,000 feet, a machine that fast would challenge even the sharpest missile to catch it. The gamble is clear. The Air Force once placed all its chips on stealth, limiting even the B-21 fleet to little more than 100 aircraft, expecting something new to follow. That something is almost certainly NEXT-RS. If it flies, it will mark a return to the philosophy of speed as survival, carrying forward the Blackbird's torch into a new century of aerial dominance. Yet America is not racing alone. Across oceans, other powers are chasing the same dream, pouring resources into their own versions of hypersonic bombers. The most pressing rival is China, which has already revealed glimpses of its hypersonic ambitions through missile tests and experimental aircraft. The competition is not simply about building faster machines. It is about reshaping the balance of power in the 21st century. Whoever wins the race to field the first operational hypersonic bomber will hold an edge that could define military strategy for decades. But there is a shadow hanging over this American project: the constant tug-of-war between ambition and budget. President Donald Trump once pressed for defense spending cuts, a move that, if fully realized, could weaken the momentum behind NEXT-RS. History has shown that programs of this scale are fragile, often derailed not by engineering, but by politics. The fear among defense experts is that any delay could give rivals the window they need to surge ahead. Still, the consensus is that America will eventually bring Next-RS into reality. The United States has the experience, the industrial base, and the proven track record of pushing aviation to its extremes. The only uncertainty lies in timing. Will the prototype take to the skies soon enough to outpace global challengers? Or will delays allow China to announce the world's first hypersonic bomber, rewriting the strategic map before America can respond? There's a ceasefire in the Middle East right now. And while diplomats talk, Iran is moving missiles. Launchers that used to sit near the coast are being repositioned hundreds of miles inland, tucked into mountain ranges and hardened bunkers, because Iran's military planners understand one thing clearly: distance is protection. Or it was. CENTCOM just requested a weapon that makes distance irrelevant. It's called Dark Eagle. It travels at Mach 5 or faster. It can reach targets 1,725 miles away, and it maneuvers in flight so existing air defenses can't track it. We're going to break down what this system actually is, why CENTCOM wants it in the region right now, and what it means for the idea that any part of Iran is out of reach. To understand why Dark Eagle matters, you need to understand the problem it was built to solve. When the US and Israel struck Iranian targets in 2024, the strikes exposed something Iran's military planners took seriously. Fixed infrastructure close to the coast or near known US naval patrol areas was vulnerable. Carrier strike groups sitting in the Persian Gulf or Arabian Sea could put aircraft and cruise missiles on target fast. So Iran did what any rational military does when it identifies a threat pattern. It adapted. Ballistic missile launchers started moving inland, not slightly inland, hundreds of miles inland, into terrain that puts them well beyond the effective reach of the weapons the US was actually using. The Army's precision strike missile, which CENTCOM deployed and used during earlier operations, reaches targets beyond 300 miles. That sounds like a lot until you look at a map of Iran and realize the country stretches nearly 1,400 miles from its western border to its eastern edge. A 300-mile weapon barely scratches the surface. Tomahawk cruise missiles extend that reach further, with a range around 1,000 miles, but they're slow. A Tomahawk flies subsonic, which means Iran's air defense network has time to track it, time to respond, and time to move whatever the missile was sent to destroy. Against a fixed target like a building, that's workable. Against a mobile launcher on a flatbed truck that can relocate in under an hour, it's not a reliable option. So the range gap is this. There's a zone deep inside Iranian territory where US conventional strike weapons either can't reach at all or arrive slowly enough that mobile targets survive. Iranian military planners didn't stumble into this gap by accident. They mapped it deliberately. Every mile a launcher moves deeper inland buys real operational advantages. More warning time before impact, more opportunity to disperse and hide, and more political cover because striking deeper into a country's interior carries heavier diplomatic weight. The precision strike missile is now running low after active combat use, according to reporting from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. So CENTCOM is looking at a situation where its most used deep strike asset is depleted, and the targets it needs to hold at risk have moved to distances where that missile couldn't reach anyway. That's the specific tactical problem CENTCOM brought to the table when it requested Dark Eagle. Not a general desire for a more powerful weapon. A precise problem with a geography attached to it, Iranian missile infrastructure sitting in a dead zone that existing US weapons can't reliably cover. The request isn't about escalation for its own sake. It's about restoring an option that Iran's repositioning strategy had effectively removed from the board. And to understand how Dark Eagle restores that option, you need to understand how the weapon actually works, because the physics involved are different from anything the US has fielded on the ground before. Dark Eagle's official designation is the Long-Range Hypersonic Weapon, or LRHW. It's the US Army's first land-based hypersonic strike system. Not an experimental prototype sitting in a lab, but a fielded weapon that reached initial operational capability and was deployed to northern Australia in 2025 for live exercises. The Army assigned it to specialized multi-domain task forces, units built specifically around the idea of long-range precision strike across land, sea, air, and space simultaneously. The system has two components, and both matter. The first is the Transport Erector Launcher, a truck. That's not a simplification. It genuinely is a heavy military truck carrying a canister that holds the missile, and it can set up, fire, and reposition without any fixed infrastructure. No bunker, no launch pad, no permanent installation that shows up on satellite imagery for an adversary to target. The second component is what rides inside that canister, the Common Hypersonic Glide Body, or CHGB. This is the actual weapon, and it's where the physics get interesting. Boost glide is the core concept. A rocket motor fires and pushes the glide body up to the upper edge of the atmosphere, well above where commercial aircraft fly, then burns out and falls away. At that point, the CHGB is unpowered. There's no engine keeping it aloft, no fuel driving it forward. It's coasting on the momentum the rocket built, descending gradually through the upper atmosphere at speeds exceeding Mach 5, which is roughly 1 mile per second. From launch to impact on a target 1,725 miles away, you're talking about minutes, not hours. Now, the speed alone isn't what separates this from a ballistic missile. Ballistic missiles are also fast. The difference is the flight path. A ballistic missile follows a predictable arc. It goes up, it comes down, and radar systems can calculate that trajectory and predict the impact point almost immediately after launch. That predictability is what makes interception possible. Air defense systems like the S-300 and S-400 are built around that assumption. They don't need to shoot it where the missile is. They shoot it where it's going to be. The CHGB breaks that assumption. It has control surfaces, fins that adjust during flight, and it uses them. It can change direction mid-course, flatten its trajectory, pull maneuvers that a ballistic missile physically cannot execute. From the perspective of a radar operator watching an inbound track, the projected impact point keeps shifting. The intercept solution that was valid 2 seconds ago is now wrong, and by the time a new solution is calculated, the glide body has moved again. At Mach 5, there isn't enough time to iterate through that cycle and get a missile off the ground before impact. That's why the Pentagon describes it as a system designed to defeat all existing air defenses. It's not that S-300 and S-400 batteries are poorly built. They're well built for the threat environment they were designed around. Dark Eagle operates outside that environment. The range figure, 1,725 miles, means a single battery positioned in a friendly country within the region could hold the entire Iranian landmass at risk simultaneously. Every hardened facility, every underground bunker, every mobile launcher convoy that Iran's military planners moved deep inland to escape the range gap sits inside that engagement envelope. And the cost attached to each shot, approximately $41 million per round, tells you something about how this weapon gets used. This isn't a system for suppressing air defenses or softening a front line. It's built for high-value targets. The kind we're missing is not an option, and where the target is either too defended or too far away for anything else to reach. The physics are one thing. The reason CENTCOM actually requested this weapon right now is a different story. The request didn't come out of nowhere. It came during a ceasefire, one that started on April 8th and has been described generously as fragile. The Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed. U.S.-Iran negotiations have stalled over the terms of any broader deal. President Trump has publicly said he's not satisfied with Iran's latest offer. So CENTCOM is operating in a window where the shooting has stopped, but the conditions that started the shooting haven't changed. And the people responsible for military planning have to assume that window closes. What the ceasefire didn't do is freeze Iran's military posture. Launcher repositioning continued. Underground facility construction continued. The missile program that was already dispersed before the ceasefire got more dispersed during it. From a planning perspective, that means if fighting resumes, the target set CENTCOM would need to engage looks harder to reach than it did at the start of the conflict. There's a compounding problem underneath that. The precision strike missile, the weapon CENTCOM actually used during earlier operations, the one CENTCOM Chief Admiral Brad Cooper called a historic first deployment, is running low. The Center for Strategic and International Studies has reported that supply is constrained after active combat use. So CENTCOM is simultaneously watching Iran's targets move deeper inland and watching its own inventory of the missile best suited to chase those targets shrink. Dark Eagle addresses both sides of that equation. It reaches targets the precision strike missile never could, even at full inventory. And because it launches from a truck that can be positioned in a partner nation well outside Iranian missile range, it doesn't require forward basing inside the threat envelope. No airfield within striking distance of Iranian ballistic missiles. No carrier that has to sail into contested waters to put its aircraft in range. The launch platform stays safe, and the weapon covers the distance anyway. The deterrence logic here runs parallel to the strike logic. A weapon that only becomes relevant after a ceasefire collapses is useful. A weapon that Iran knows is already positioned and ready before that collapse is more useful, because it changes the calculation Iran makes about whether to let the ceasefire collapse at all. That's the point of deploying it now, during the fragile period, rather than waiting for hostilities to resume and then rushing it into theater. There's also a broader signal embedded in this deployment that goes beyond the Iran problem specifically. This would mark the first time the U.S. has ever deployed a land-based hypersonic weapon to CENTCOM. That's not a routine equipment rotation. It changes the baseline of what military planners in the region, Iranian, Russian-aligned, and otherwise, have to account for when they think about what the U.S. can reach and how fast. The message isn't subtle. The geographic buffer that made deep inland positioning feel safe no longer functions the way it did. No location inside the Iranian landmass sits outside a 1,725-mile engagement circle if this battery is forward deployed. The mountain ranges that provided natural concealment, the eastern provinces that felt logistically remote, the underground complexes built specifically because previous U.S. weapons couldn't reliably reach them. None of that geography provides the protection it once did. But that doesn't mean Dark Eagle solves everything. The weapon has real constraints, and Iran's response to it is already taking shape in ways that matter for what comes next. Dark Eagle is not a weapon you use to win a war of attrition. At $41 million per round and a battery that carries a small number of missiles, it's a precision instrument built for specific, high-value targets, not a tool for sustained bombardment. That constraint matters because Iran's military planners know it too. The reload cycle is another factor worth understanding. Hypersonic systems don't reset quickly. The TEL has to be restocked, checked, and prepared before it can fire again, and that process takes time. An adversary who has studied the system, and Iran has had every reason to study it, can factor that window into their planning. If they know a battery has expended its rounds, there's an interval where that threat temporarily disappears from the board. That's not a fatal flaw, but it's a real operational ceiling that shapes how the weapon gets used. Iran's response to the broader pattern of U.S. precision strike development was already visible before Dark Eagle entered the conversation. Deeper dispersal of launcher assets, construction of hardened underground facilities designed to survive direct hits from conventional munitions, and the use of decoy equipment to complicate targeting. These are the standard moves any military makes when faced with a precision weapon it can't shoot down. Iran has been running that playbook for years, accelerating it after each round of strikes exposed vulnerabilities. Dark Eagle changes the range equation, but it doesn't eliminate the hardening and dispersal problem. A weapon that can reach a target 1,725 miles away still has to know where that target is. The arms race dimension here extends well beyond Iran. China fielded operational hypersonic systems years ago. Russia has deployed its own variants. Both countries have been willing to share technology and doctrine with partners, and Iran has spent years studying what those systems can do and how to counter them. The U.S. is not the only country that understands boost glide physics, and the gap between what Dark Eagle represents today and what adversaries can replicate tomorrow narrows faster than procurement timelines suggest. What this deployment actually signals about U.S. strategy is the part that outlasts the immediate Iran situation. The Pentagon is moving away from a model built around carrier strike groups as the primary tool for projecting power in contested regions. Distributed, land-based precision strike. A truck and a missile positioned in a partner nation, no carrier required, no airfield needed, is the emerging architecture. Dark Eagle is the first land-based hypersonic piece of that structure to reach CENTCOM. It almost certainly won't be the last. The question CENTCOM is now sitting with isn't whether Dark Eagle works. It's whether one battery is enough to hold a target set as large and as dispersed as Iran's missile infrastructure at credible risk. If the answer is no, what's already happened is a first deployment, not a final one. Dark Eagle doesn't just extend the U.S. strike envelope. It erases the geographic logic that made deep inland positioning feel safe in the first place. No distance inside 1,725 miles offers protection from a weapon that arrives in minutes and can't be tracked to an intercept solution. A man named Bob Lazar told a Las Vegas news station he'd worked on a craft at a site near Area 51 that didn't use any propulsion system he'd ever studied. No jet exhaust, no rotors, no wings doing any aerodynamic work. The government never confirmed his story. They never denied it either. And then separately, across different countries and different decades, thousands of people started describing the same thing. Silent, massive, triangular, no exhaust trail, no sonic boom. So here's the question that actually matters. What kind of propulsion system could explain any of that? The TR-3B Astra is the name that got attached to a pattern of sightings that started clustering around classified U.S. airspace in the late 1980s. No defense agency has ever put that name on a budget line. No Air Force spokesperson has confirmed the program exists, but the sightings kept coming. And what's strange isn't just the volume of reports, it's how consistent the details are across witnesses who had no connection to each other. People describing what they saw kept landing on the same handful of characteristics. The craft was triangular, it was large. Some accounts put it at the size of a football field. It hovered without any rotor wash disturbing the ground below it. It moved at speed with no sonic boom. And when it accelerated, it didn't do it the way any jet does, with a visible burn and a thrust vector you can follow. It just moved. Now take those witness descriptions and run them against conventional aerospace engineering, and you hit a wall almost immediately. A craft the size of a football field hovering silently isn't something you can explain with rotors. The rotor diameter required would be enormous and the noise would be deafening. You can't explain it with jet thrust either, because jet thrust at that scale produces visible exhaust plumes and enormous heat signatures. And you definitely can't explain sharp right-angle turns at speed with any airframe that relies on aerodynamic surfaces, because the G-forces involved would destroy both the structure and anyone inside it. So the craft either doesn't exist or it runs on something that the public aerospace industry hasn't built yet or hasn't been allowed to talk about building. That second option is where this gets interesting, because when you actually look at the physics involved, the question isn't whether a system like this is theoretically possible. The question is whether someone working in a classified environment with classified funding got far enough along the development curve to make it operational. The researchers and analysts who've spent time on this keep arriving at the same two concepts. The first is plasma, specifically superheated plasma generated from a mercury-based fluid spinning at extremely high speed inside a sealed ring around the craft's core. The second is gravity, not fighting it with lift and thrust the way every conventional aircraft does, but interacting with it directly, using that plasma field to reduce the craft's apparent gravitational mass before any other propulsion system even has to work. That's the theory. And before you write it off, it's worth knowing that neither of those concepts requires you to invent new physics. Both of them have real, documented scientific foundations that show up in legitimate research going back decades. The plasma part connects to something called magnetohydrodynamics. The gravity part connects to a body of classified and declassified research on electrogravitics that the US military was actively funding in the 1950s before the program records went quiet. What would a system like that actually look like? That's where we're going next. The most specific technical claim attached to the TR-3B isn't vague. It has a name, a mechanism, and enough physical detail that you can actually stress test it against known science. The system is called the magnetic field disruptor, and the core of it is a ring. a toroidal chamber running around the craft's midsection, filled with mercury-based plasma, spinning at extremely high rotational speed. Here's what that actually means. Mercury isn't exotic. It's a liquid metal at room temperature, which already makes it unusual, but it's also one of the most electrically conductive liquids that exist naturally. When you heat mercury into a plasma state and push it through a magnetic field, it doesn't just flow, it responds. The charged particles interact with the field lines, and that interaction generates force. That's not a fringe claim. That's magnetohydrodynamics, a branch of physics with a published research record going back to the mid-20th century. MHD propulsion has been tested in real applications. The Japanese built an experimental ship in the early 1990s called the Yamato One that used seawater as the conductive fluid and electromagnetic force as the drive, with no moving parts. It worked. It was slow and inefficient at that scale, but the underlying principle was sound. What the TR-3B theory proposes is a far more aggressive version of that same principle, not using the fluid to generate thrust directly, but using it to generate a field powerful enough to interfere with the craft's interaction with gravity itself. That's the leap, and it's a significant one. The claim in TR-3B literature is that when the plasma ring reaches sufficient rotational velocity inside the toroidal chamber, the electromagnetic field it produces disrupts the local gravitational field around the craft. Not cancels it, disrupts it, reduces the effective gravitational mass the craft presents to the surrounding spacetime. The number that gets cited is 89%. The rotating plasma ring, according to this theory, cuts the craft's apparent gravitational mass down to roughly 11% of its actual physical mass. Think about what that does to the propulsion math. You're not trying to lift a football field-sized aircraft anymore. You're trying to move something that, from a gravitational standpoint, weighs about as much as a small car. The three conventional thrusters sitting at the craft's corners, reportedly running on hydrogen and liquid oxygen, aren't doing the heavy work. They're just handling directional movement on top of a gravitational load that's already been almost entirely neutralized. That's why there's no massive exhaust plume. That's why there's no deafening roar. The hard part of flight, fighting gravity, has already been handled before the thrusters even fire. Now, the engineering problems here are real and worth being honest about. Spinning plasma in a stable toroidal configuration is not simple. The energy input required to maintain that kind of rotational velocity in a sealed ring would be enormous. We're talking about a power source well beyond anything in the public aerospace inventory. The plasma has to stay contained, has to stay at the right temperature and pressure, and has to maintain consistent rotational speed or the field collapses. Any instability in the ring means the mass reduction effect degrades, and suddenly you've got a massive aircraft with almost no conventional lift trying to stay airborne. No public laboratory has demonstrated mass reduction through rotating plasma at any scale, let alone at the scale this system would require. That's the honest answer. The MHD physics are real. The specific application the TR-3B theory describes hasn't been proven in any open scientific literature. But that's also exactly what you'd expect if the program existed and was classified. You wouldn't see the results in a journal, you wouldn't see a patent application. You'd see the foundational research up to a certain point, and then you'd see it stop. Not because the science dead-ended, but because someone decided the science was too consequential to leave in public view. Which raises the obvious question, where did this idea actually come from? Because the mercury plasma concept didn't appear out of nowhere in the 1980s. The trail goes back much further than most people expect. The mercury plasma concept has a genealogy, and it doesn't start with American aerospace engineers sitting in a clean room in the 1980s. It starts in wartime Germany with a program so strange that historians still argue about whether it actually existed. The project was called Die Glocke, German for the bell. According to accounts that surfaced after the war, primarily through the work of Polish journalist Igor Witkowski, the device was a bell-shaped structure roughly 9 feet wide, filled with a mercury-like substance called Cerium-525 and subjected to counter-rotating high-voltage fields that caused the fluid to spin in opposite directions simultaneously. Witnesses reportedly described biological effects near the device: plant material decaying rapidly, animals dying. The Nazi scientists running the program apparently called it our most important project. What it was actually supposed to do was never confirmed. Most of the personnel involved were killed before the end of the war, and the device itself disappeared. You can take that account at face value or treat it skeptically. The sourcing is thin and the details are hard to verify. But notice the structure of the claim. Rotating mercury-like fluid, high-voltage electromagnetic excitation, an effect on the surrounding environment that goes beyond simple thrust. That's the same structural description that shows up decades later in TR-3B literature. Either the TR-3B theory borrowed from Die Glock mythology, or both stories are pointing at the same underlying physics from different directions. After the war ended, the US government ran Operation Paperclip, pulling hundreds of German scientists and engineers into American defense programs. Not all of them were rocket engineers. Some were working on propulsion concepts that didn't fit neatly into the conventional aerospace categories of the time. What they brought with them, beyond hardware, was a research culture that was willing to explore the edges of known physics under military funding and military secrecy. That context matters for what happened next. In the early 1950s, an American physicist and inventor named Townsend Brown had already been working for years on something he called electrogravitics. The idea that an asymmetric high-voltage capacitor, charged sufficiently, would produce thrust in the direction of the positive plate with no moving parts and no combustion. He demonstrated it. The effect was real, reproducible, and caught the attention of military researchers. The US Air Force funded studies into it. Aviation industry groups wrote reports on it. And then, around the mid-1950s, all of that public activity stopped. The papers stopped appearing. The funding disappeared from any accessible record. The Biefeld-Brown effect, the name the phenomenon carries in physics literature, didn't get disproven. It just stopped being discussed openly. Small-scale demonstrations of the Biefeld-Brown effect still work today. Hobbyists build lifters, lightweight foil devices that rise off a surface using nothing but high-voltage electrical charge. And they function exactly as the theory predicts. The counter-argument from mainstream physics is that the effect is just ion wind, not true electrogravitic thrust, and that it would be useless in a vacuum. Brown's supporters disagreed, arguing the ion wind explanation didn't hold at higher voltages and in vacuum conditions. That argument never got resolved publicly because the funded research that might have resolved it went somewhere it couldn't be followed. Then there's Ben Rich. He ran Lockheed's Skunk Works program after Kelly Johnson, the division responsible for the U-2, the SR-71, and the F-117. Before he died in 1995, Rich reportedly told a UCLA alumni gathering that Skunk Works had the technology to take ET home and that it would take an act of God to get it declassified. He made similar statements in correspondence. Nobody from Lockheed ever clarified what he meant, and the company never addressed it directly. That's the chain. Unconventional physics demonstrated, funding vanishes, sightings appear, and the people closest to the classified programs hint at something that doesn't fit the public inventory. Strip away the theory and just look at the performance numbers that witnesses consistently describe, and you can work backward to what the craft's operating envelope would have to be. No aerodynamic lift surfaces. That's the starting point. If the plasma field is handling the gravitational load, the airframe doesn't need wings generating lift, which means it also doesn't need the forward speed that wings require to stay airborne. It can hover at 0 knots indefinitely with no rotor and no ground effect because the field is doing the work that lift normally does. The corner thrusters handle where it goes, not whether it stays up. Supersonic flight without a sonic boom follows from the same logic. A sonic boom happens because a moving object compresses the air ahead of it faster than the pressure wave can travel. But if the craft is wrapped in an active electromagnetic field that's already interacting with the surrounding medium, that field changes how the pressure wave forms. The compression still happens, but the shock cone either doesn't fully develop or dissipates before it reaches the ground. Witnesses consistently report no boom. That's one explanation for why. Right-angle turns at speed are the other characteristic that breaks conventional physics. Any aircraft relying on aerodynamic control surfaces has to bank, build centripetal force, an arc through a turn because the airframe and the pilot inside it can only survive so many G-forces. A craft that's already reduced its effective mass by the margins this theory describes doesn't have the same inertia problem. The thrusters redirect, the field adjusts, the craft turns because there's far less mass fighting the direction change. The radar signature works differently too. Conventional stealth uses geometry and radar-absorbent materials to reduce the reflection that comes back to a receiver. A craft enclosed in an active plasma envelope isn't relying on surface materials at all. The plasma itself scatters and absorbs incoming radar energy dynamically. That's not a coating. That's a field that changes based on what's hitting it, which makes it fundamentally harder to design a countermeasure against. Put all of that together and you understand why, if this system works, it never gets officially confirmed. A functioning gravitic propulsion platform makes the entire existing aerospace infrastructure, every fighter, every bomber, every satellite launch vehicle, look like it was built with the wrong assumptions. You don't announce that. You don't even hint at it. You let the sightings pile up and you say nothing, because silence costs you nothing and disclosure costs you everything. The physics isn't impossible. The funding trail is real. The sightings are consistent across decades and continents. And the people who would know aren't talking. That's either the most consequential secret in aerospace history or the most disciplined silence ever maintained around something that doesn't exist. Neither answer is particularly comforting. Subscribe for more coverage of black projects and classified programs, and click the video on your screen right now.